My son looked at the music box in my hands and spit on it. Right there, in front of 300 people in tuxedos. "Garage junk," he said, laughing. "Get this grease monkey out of my concert hall." Security grabbed my arm. The old beggar beside me did not move. He just smiled. My son had no idea he had just insulted the man who wrote every note he was about to perform. I truly appreciate you taking a moment to listen. If you are here, it probably means that opening scene struck something personal. Take a second and comment where you are watching from. I read every single one. And tell me, what would you have done if you were standing in that lobby, watching your own child spit on 2 years of your life? That question sits at the heart of this story. Just to clarify, some details are shaped for narrative and learning purposes. Any resemblance to real individuals or settings is coincidental, though the message itself is meant to be meaningful. It started on a Tuesday in April. Detroit was shaking off the last of winter, and the cherry blossoms along Michigan Avenue were just beginning to open. I remember because I could smell them through my kitchen window while I counted what was left in the coffee tin on top of my refrigerator. $6.20. That was everything I had until my pension check arrived next Thursday. My name is Raymond Jackson. I am 71 years old. My hands are thick and scarred from 40 years of turning wrenches at the Ford River Rouge plant. My knuckles pop when I make a fist, and my lower back has not forgiven me for the thousands of hours I spent bent under hoods and chassis. I do not have much anymore. I sold my garage 3 years ago, the one I built with my own hands on Livernois Avenue, to help my son Darnell pay his tuition at the Detroit Conservatory of Music. I sold it for $180,000. Every cent went to him. Before that, I cashed out my retirement fund to cover his first 2 years. Before that, my wife Lorraine took extra shifts at the dry cleaners while she was sick to make sure he had a proper suit for his auditions. She never told me about those shifts. I found out after she passed. But I will get to that later. Today was special. Tonight was Darnell's debut concert as the lead conductor of the Detroit Metropolitan Symphony Orchestra. He was 34 years old, and he was about to perform a brand new symphony that critics were already calling a masterpiece. My boy, the kid who used to sit on an overturned oil drum in my garage, banging a wrench against a hubcap, making rhythms while I rebuilt transmissions. He had made it, and I had something for him. On my workbench, which was really just my kitchen table now, sat a wooden box the size of a shoebox. It had taken me 2 years to build. 2 years of filing, soldering, adjusting tiny brass gears with tweezers and a magnifying glass. My eyes are not what they used to be, and there were nights I worked until 3 in the morning, squinting under a lamp, cursing my shaking hands. It was a music box, but not the kind you buy in a store. This was a mechanical marvel, hand-built from scraps I collected from junkyards and estate sales. Brass gears, a steel cylinder with hand-cut pins, a resonating chamber carved from maple wood I salvaged from a broken piano I found on the curb. When you opened the lid and turned the small crank on the side, it played a melody. Not just any melody. It played the first song Darnell ever composed. He was 8 years old. Lorraine had just started him on piano lessons with old Miss Gertrude down the street. One evening, he came running into the garage where I was elbow-deep in a Chevy engine, and he hummed me a tune. "Daddy, I made a song," he said. His eyes were wide with pride. I wiped the grease off my hands and listened. It was simple. Just 8 bars. But it was beautiful. Lorraine wrote it down on a napkin that night. I kept that napkin in my wallet for 26 years. Now it lived inside this box, translated into brass pins and steel teeth. Every note perfect. Every rest measured. I wound the crank and listened one last time. The melody filled my small kitchen, tinny and delicate, like a whisper from the past. I closed the lid and wrapped it in a brown paper bag because I could not afford wrapping paper. I put on my suit. It was charcoal gray, bought 11 years ago for Lorraine's funeral. The cuffs were fraying, and it pulled tight across my shoulders, but it was clean. I polished my old work boots until they shone as best they could. Steel toe, leather, built to last. Just like me. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. An old black man in a faded suit with hands too rough for a concert hall. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, I was going to watch my son conduct a symphony, and I was going to give him back the first song he ever made, built into something that would last forever. I locked my apartment, walked down the 3 flights of stairs, and headed for the bus stop on Michigan Avenue. The evening air was cool, carrying the smell of cherry blossoms and diesel from the freeway overpass. The number 7 bus was my chariot tonight. When it arrived, it was crowded. Standing room only. I squeezed in, gripping the overhead rail with one hand and pressing the paper bag against my chest with the other. I could feel the gears inside shift slightly as the bus lurched forward. I held it tighter. That was when I saw him. In the back of the bus, slumped against the window, was an old man. He looked older than me, maybe 75 or 80. He was wearing a trench coat that might have been beige 20 years ago, but was now a patchwork of stains, coffee, mud, something darker. His hair was a wild explosion of gray, uncombed and tangled. His beard covered most of his face. He smelled like wet newspaper and bus exhaust. But his hands, I noticed his hands. They were resting on his knees, and his fingers were moving. Not randomly. They were tapping a rhythm, a complex rhythm, something in 7/8 time. Precise and deliberate. It was the kind of pattern you did not learn on the street. It was the kind of pattern that took decades of training. The bus driver was yelling at him. "Hey, I told you already. $2, or you get off at the next stop. I am not running a charity here." The old man did not respond. He just kept tapping. I felt that old familiar heat rise in my chest. The same heat I felt when a foreman at the plant would scream at the new guys for moving too slow. I have never been able to watch someone get pushed around. It is not in my wiring. 3 teenagers near the back were snickering at the old man. One of them, a boy with a gold chain and a smirk that needed correcting, kicked his foot. "Yo, Grandpa," the boy said. "You reek. Get off before you stink up the whole bus." The old man did not look up. He just kept tapping that rhythm on his knee. 7/8 time. Precise. Like a metronome buried inside his bones. I stepped between them. I am not a big man, but 40 years of swinging a torque wrench leaves a mark on your frame. I looked the boy in the eye. "That is enough," I said, my voice low and even. "Leave him alone." The boy puffed his chest. "Or what, old man?" I stepped closer. Let him see my hands. The scarred knuckles. The calluses thick as leather. "Son," I said quietly, "I have been taking things apart and putting them back together since before your mother was born. Do not make me demonstrate." The bus driver glanced in the mirror. "Settle down back there or everyone walks." The boy sucked his teeth, muttered something, and sat down. I turned to the old man. "You all right?" He looked up at me. That was when I first saw his eyes. Blue. Not faded or watery. Sharp, piercing. The kind of blue you see in the center of a welding flame. Those were not the eyes of a confused man. Those were the eyes of someone cataloging everything. "I am fine," he said. His voice was raspy like gravel in a tin can. "Just forgot my wallet. Driver says I pay, or I walk at the next stop. $2. The driver called back. Or, he is off at Jefferson. I reached into my pocket. $6.20. My food for the next 3 days. But I looked at the old man's shoes, split at the soles. Newspaper stuffed inside for insulation. I pulled out $2 in quarters and dropped them into the fare box. "He stays," I said. The old man watched the coins fall. "You did not have to do that," he said. I sat down next to him. We all need a hand sometimes. He extended a grimy hand. The fingernails were yellowed, but the fingers themselves were elegant. Long. Tapered. Not the fingers of a laborer. "My name is Clem," he said. "Raymond." His grip was surprisingly firm. We rode in silence for a few minutes. I noticed he was still tapping. Left hand on his thigh. Right foot on the floor. Different rhythms. Polyrhythmic. I knew enough about music from raising Darnell to recognize complexity when I heard it. This man was not just fidgeting. He was conducting something inside his head. Then he started to hum. Soft, barely audible above the diesel rumble. A melody. Haunting and beautiful. It climbed and fell in unexpected ways. Minor to major. Tension to release. It sounded familiar. Like something from a dream you cannot quite remember. "Where are you headed tonight, Clem?" I asked. He stopped humming and pointed out the window. "Same place as you, I think." There. Orchestra Hall rose from the street like a cathedral of stone and light. The granite facade was illuminated by spotlights. A red carpet stretched to the brass doors. Limousines lined the block, discharging men and women in evening gowns. "My son works there," I said. "He is the conductor. Tonight is his debut." Clem's eyebrows rose. A conductor. Something flickered behind those blue eyes. Fancy. I have not been inside a hall like that in years. "Would you mind if I came in with you? Just to see the lobby, to feel the acoustics." It has been so long. I hesitated. I knew how Darnell was. He cared about appearances. Walking in with me in my frayed suit was already a risk. Walking in with a man who smelled like a bus station was asking for trouble. But I saw the longing in Clem's eyes. The hunger for something that had nothing to do with food. I knew that hunger. I felt it every time I drove past my old garage on Livernois and saw someone else's name on the sign. "All right," I said. "But stay in the lobby." Clem smiled. A crooked, yellowed grin. "Do not worry, Raymond. I will be invisible." We stepped off the bus into the cool April evening. Cherry blossoms glowed pink under the streetlights. We walked toward Orchestra Hall. Two old men in clothes that did not belong within 100 yards of this place. The doorman looked at us like a stain on his carpet but said nothing when I mentioned Darnell's name. Inside, the lobby was a palace. Crystal chandeliers hung from a ceiling painted with golden angels. Polished marble floors reflected the light like still water. Men in $3,000 suits moved with the confidence of people who never doubted their right to be anywhere. I felt small. I always felt small in places like this, but Clem did something strange. He stopped in the middle of the lobby and closed his eyes. He inhaled deeply, and a look of pure peace settled over his face, like a man returning home after a long exile. Then he opened his eyes and walked toward the east wall. There, between two marble pillars, hung a large oil painting in a gilded frame. A portrait of a man standing at a conductor's podium, younger, clean-shaven, with sharp blue eyes and silver hair swept back. He held a baton like a sword. The plaque beneath read, "Clement Ashworth, founding musical director, 1978 to 2014. Clem stood in front of that portrait for a long time. He did not move. He did not speak. He just stared with an expression that might have been grief, or anger, or something deeper than both. I looked at the portrait. Then I looked at Clem. The wild gray hair hiding the same bone structure. The beard concealing the same jawline. And those eyes. Those unmistakable, piercing blue eyes. My stomach dropped. I did not have time to process what I was seeing. The resemblance between the man standing beside me and the man in that portrait. The same cheekbones, the same brow, those same ice blue eyes staring back from canvas and from flesh. Before I could open my mouth to ask, a wave of applause rippled through the lobby. The inner doors had opened, and people were flowing toward the concert hall. The show was about to begin. Clem turned away from the portrait. His face was unreadable. "Shall we?" he said, gesturing toward the crowd. I nodded slowly, still unsettled, and we moved toward the edge of the lobby where the ushers were directing guests. I was not going inside. I did not have a ticket. I just wanted to find Darnell before the performance, give him the music box, and wish him well. That was the plan. Simple, clean, in and out. Then I saw him. Darnell emerged from a side corridor flanked by two men in expensive suits. He looked magnificent. Black tuxedo tailored to perfection. A silk bow tie. Cufflinks that caught the chandelier light like small diamonds. His hair was freshly lined up, his shoes polished to mirrors. He was laughing at something one of the men said. His teeth white and perfect. His posture radiating the kind of confidence that only comes from knowing every eye in the room is on you. My heart swelled. That was my boy. That was the child I carried on my shoulders through the Ford parking lot, after double shifts. The boy who fell asleep on my workbench, surrounded by wrenches and oil cans, while I rebuilt carburetors. He had made it to a world I could never reach, and looking at him now, shining like polished chrome, I felt a pride so fierce it made my eyes sting. "Darnell," I called out. My voice carried across the marble lobby. He turned. The smile vanished from his face like someone had flipped a switch. He saw me first, the old man in the funeral suit, and his jaw tightened. Then his eyes moved to Clem, standing a few feet behind me, the filthy trench coat, the wild hair, the smell that was now drawing glances from nearby patrons. Darnell's face did not just fall. It went gray, a sickly ashen color that made him look 10 years older in a single breath. He crossed the lobby in 4 quick strides, his Italian shoes clicking sharply on the marble. He did not hug me. He did not say, "Happy to see you." He grabbed my elbow and pulled me toward a corner, away from the crowd. "Dad, what are you doing here?" His voice was a hiss through clenched teeth. His eyes kept darting to the people around us, checking to see who was watching. I smiled despite his grip on my arm. "Happy concert night, son. I came to see you perform, and I brought you something." I held up the paper bag. Darnell did not look at the bag. He was staring past me at Clem, who was standing by the portrait, examining a program he had picked up from a side table. "Who is that?" Darnell whispered. "Why is there a homeless man in my concert hall?" "He is a friend," I said. "I met him on the bus. He just wanted to see the building. He is harmless." "The bus." Darnell repeated the word like it was a disease. He closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Dad, the entire board of directors is here tonight. The Grammy committee is here. National critics. This is the most important night of my career. And you show up looking like a mechanic who wandered in from the alley, dragging a vagrant behind you." The words hit me like a slap. Mechanic. He said it like it was a dirty word. Like the job that fed him and clothed him and paid for every piano lesson was something to be ashamed of. "I just wanted to give you this," I said quietly. I pushed the paper bag toward him. "Please, open it." He snatched the bag from me. Not gently. He tore it open and pulled out the music box. He stared at it. The wooden casing, hand-sanded and lacquered, the brass gears visible through the glass window on the side. The small crank. He turned it over in his hands. "What is this?" he asked. His voice was flat. "Dead. I made it for you," I said. "It took me 2 years. It plays the first song you ever wrote, the one you hummed to me in the garage when you were 8. Remember? Your mama wrote it down on a napkin. I built it into this box, so you would always have it, so you would remember where you started." Darnell looked at the box. Then he looked at me. And then he did something that broke a part of me that I did not know could still break. He spit on it, not a dry, dismissive gesture. A wet, deliberate glob that landed on the glass window and dripped down over the brass gears inside. The lobby seemed to go silent. I could feel the eyes of strangers on us. "Garage junk," Darnell said. His voice was loud enough for people nearby to hear. "You bring me garage junk on the most important night of my life." He held the box away from him like it was contaminated. "This is what you are, Dad. Grease and rust and scrap metal. You are a grease monkey who cannot take a hint. I built a life above this, above you, and you keep dragging me back into the oil pit." He turned to a security guard who had been watching from the pillar. "Earl, get this man and his street friend out of my lobby. Now, use the service exit, so the guests do not see them leave." "Darnell," I whispered. "Son, please." He threw the music box. Not gently, not into my hands. He threw it sideways, and it hit the rim of a tall brass trash can near the wall. The lid popped open on impact, and I heard the sound of something cracking inside. Small gears grinding against broken glass. The melody mechanism shattered. 2 years of work, reduced to scrap in a single throw. The security guard gripped my arm. "Sir, I need you to come with me." I could not move. I stood frozen, staring at the trash can where my music box lay broken among coffee cups and crumpled programs. 300 people in the lobby, and not one of them said a word. Not one of them looked at me with anything other than pity or discomfort. Darnell was already walking away, straightening his bow tie, smoothing his jacket, transforming back into the polished conductor before he reached the inner doors. He did not look back. Then I saw movement. Clem walked calmly to the trash can. He reached in with his grimy hand and pulled out the music box. He held it carefully, like a wounded bird. He opened the cracked lid. The mechanism tried to play, stuttering and grinding, but a few notes still came through. Broken, halting, but recognizable. Clem's face changed completely. The cloudy, wandering look of the old beggar was gone. In its place was something sharp and cold. His eyes locked onto the mechanism inside the box, and his lips moved silently, counting the pins on the cylinder, counting the notes. Recognizing them, he looked up at me. The expression in his eyes sent a chill down my spine. It was the look of a predator who had just found what he was hunting. "Do not pick it up, Luther," he said softly. Then he caught himself. "Raymond, do not grieve for this yet." He placed the broken box gently into his deep coat pocket. "Today your son made a choice. He chose the spotlight over the man who built his stage, and I am going to make sure he understands what that costs." I stared at Clem. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. "I am going to make sure he understands what that costs." His voice had changed. It was no longer the raspy whisper of a beggar. It was deeper, firme, the voice of a man accustomed to commanding a room. Before I could respond, the security guard's hand tightened on my arm. "Sir, we need to move. Now." Clem turned to the guard. His eyes, those piercing blue flames, locked onto the young man's face. The guard flinched. It was subtle, just a twitch of the jaw, but I saw it. Something about the way Clem looked at him made the guard's hand loosen. "We are leaving," Clem said calmly. "No need for force." We walked toward the service exit. The hallway was narrow and cold, lined with pipes and electrical panels. The glamour of the lobby vanished in 3 steps. We were backstage now, in the machinery of the building, the part nobody was supposed to see. It felt appropriate. When we reached the metal door that opened onto the alley, Clem put his hand on my shoulder. His grip was gentle, but firm. "Do not mourn tonight, Raymond. What your son did, that was not strength. That was fear. A man who is secure in his talent does not spit on the hands that built him. Remember that." I nodded, not trusting my voice. My chest felt hollow, like someone had reached in and scooped out everything warm. The alley was dark and smelled of garbage and kitchen grease from the restaurant next door. The night air had turned cold. I pulled my jacket tighter and started walking toward the bus stop. Clem walked beside me, silent, the broken music box bulging in his coat pocket. We had made it half a block when my phone buzzed. I pulled it from my pocket with numb fingers. The screen lit up with a text message. It was not from Darnell. It was from Vanessa, my daughter-in-law. I opened it. "Do not bother coming home tonight," Darnell called. "He told me what you did. Showing up like that with a homeless man. Embarrassing him in front of the Grammy committee. We discussed this weeks ago, Luther. You were not supposed to come tonight. The apartment is going on the market tomorrow. You have 48 hours to collect your things. After that, the locks change, and anything left goes in the dumpster. Do not contact us." I read it twice. My eyes kept catching on one word. Apartment. My apartment. The apartment I had lived in for 12 years. The apartment where Lorraine took her last breath. The apartment I had signed over to Darnell 3 years ago, because he said it would help with tax purposes for the symphony board. Because he promised, hand on his mother's Bible, that I could live there until they carried me out in a box. They were selling it. They were erasing me. I looked at Clem. He was watching me. He had read the glow of the screen reflected in my eyes. He could see my face, crumbling. "Bad news?" he asked softly. "They are taking my home," I whispered. "My son. He is selling my apartment. He gave me 2 days." Clem said nothing for a moment. He looked up at the sky. The city glow blocked out the stars, leaving only an orange haze above the rooftops. Then he looked back at me with those impossibly sharp eyes. "Go home, Raymond," he said. "Get what matters. The things that cannot be replaced. Do not fight them tonight. Tonight they have the power. But power shifts. It always does." I wanted to argue. I wanted to go back into that concert hall and grab my son by his silk lapels and shake him until the little boy who loved me fell out. But I was tired. Bone tired. The kind of tired that settles into your marrow after 71 years of giving everything to people who take it as their due. "I will find you," Clem said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled receipt. He patted his coat until he found a pencil stub. He wrote something on the back and pressed it into my hand. "If things get worse, if they come for you before you are ready, come to this address. Iron door. Knock. 3 times. I looked at the paper. 422 Beaubien Street. A warehouse district. I knew that area. It was abandoned. Condemned buildings and broken streetlights. "Clem," I started. He held up a hand. "Do not judge a book by its cover, Raymond. You of all people should know that." He smiled that crooked yellow smile, but there was warmth in it now. Something almost paternal. "Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be a long day." He turned and walked into the darkness of the alley, his ragged coat flapping behind him. Within seconds, the shadows swallowed him whole. I stood alone under a buzzing streetlight, holding a crumpled receipt in one hand and nothing else. The bus ride home took forever. Every stop felt like a countdown. 48 hours. The words pulsed in my head like a heartbeat. I gripped the duffel bag strap on my shoulder, the one I had packed that morning with just my suit and the music box. Now the suit was wrinkled, and the music box was gone, hidden in a stranger's coat. When the bus reached my stop on Michigan Avenue in Corktown, I stepped off into the drizzle. The apartment building was a 3-story brick walk-up, nothing fancy, but it had been mine. Ours. Lorraine had picked out the curtains. She had planted tomatoes on the fire escape every summer until her hands got too weak to hold the watering can. I climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor. My keys were in my pocket, the same keys I had carried for 12 years. I slid the first one into the deadbolt. It did not turn. I tried again, jiggled it, pushed harder. Nothing. The lock had been changed. Not in 48 hours. Now. Tonight. While I was at the concert, they had already sent someone to change my locks. I pressed my ear against the door. I could hear movement inside. Footsteps. The low murmur of voices. A woman's laugh. Vanessa. I knocked. 3 sharp raps against the wood. The door opened. Vanessa stood there in yoga pants and a cashmere sweater, holding a glass of wine. Behind her, I could see a woman with a clipboard and a laser measuring tape. A realtor, already measuring the rooms, already dividing up my life into square footage. Vanessa looked at me. Her face showed no guilt, no shame, only inconvenience. She checked her watch, a diamond thing that caught the hallway light. "Oh," she said. "You are early. We expected you to still be embarrassing your son at his little concert." She took a sip of wine. "The 48 hours starts now, Luther. Not yesterday, so technically you are trespassing." She tilted her head. "Should I call someone? Or are you going to be smart about this?" I looked at this woman. She was standing in my doorway, in the apartment where my wife died, drinking wine and measuring walls. "This is my home, Vanessa," I said. "Lorraine died in that bedroom. You cannot change the locks while I am gone." Vanessa sighed, swirling her wine. "Luther, the apartment belongs to Darnell. It has for 3 years. You signed the papers. You are a guest who overstayed his welcome. Let me in. Let me get my things." "You can have your things tomorrow," she said. "During business hours. With supervision. I do not trust you alone in here. Everything in there is mine," I said, my voice rising. 30 years of a life, and you are telling me I cannot touch it." She pulled her phone out like a weapon. "Do not make this difficult, old man. Darnell warned me. The dementia is getting worse." She was already dialing. 3 taps. She put the phone to her ear, and her voice transformed. Thin. Trembling. Afraid. "Yes, hello. I need help. 1427 Michigan Avenue. Apartment 2B. My father-in-law is here. He does not live here anymore, but he is demanding to be let in. He is getting aggressive. I am pregnant, and I feel unsafe. Please hurry." She hung up. The trembling vanished. The word pregnant hit me like a brick. I did not know she was expecting my grandchild growing inside this woman, and she was using it as a shield to have me removed from my own home. "I am not leaving," I said. I planted my feet. Vanessa shrugged, stepped back, and closed the door in my face. The deadbolt slid home. I stood in the hallway under a flickering fluorescent light, listening to her muffled voice through the door, talking to the realtor about kitchen dimensions, about knocking out a wall. The wall where Lorraine had hung Darnell's first recital certificate. The sirens came 8 minutes later. 2 officers walked up the stairs, young and broad, hands near their belts. The white officer with a crew cut looked at me with immediate suspicion. "Sir, we got a call. A woman says you are refusing to leave." "I live here," I said. 12 years. My daughter-in-law changed the locks tonight while I was out. "Ma'am?" The other officer called. "Can you open up?" Vanessa appeared, tears in her eyes, one hand on her stomach. "Thank God," she breathed. "He has been banging for 20 minutes. He has dementia. He does not understand the apartment belongs to my husband now." She held up her phone showing a deed, Darnell's name. "My signature from 3 years ago. Sir, do you own this property?" The officer asked. "I signed it over to my son, but it was just on paper. He promised I could stay. So you do not own it. The owner's representative is asking you to leave. If you refuse, that is criminal trespass." I looked at Vanessa behind them, dabbing dry eyes with a tissue, hand on her belly. Flawless. "Can I get my things?" My voice was quiet now. 5 minutes. 1 bag. "I will be watching," Vanessa said. They let me in. I walked to my bedroom. Everything looked wrong. Someone had already removed Lorraine's quilt. I grabbed my duffel bag. I did not pack clothes. I packed the photo album. 40 years of memories. I packed Lorraine's diary. I packed the wooden box with my papers, birth certificate, pension documents, and I packed the medal for 40 years of perfect attendance at Ford. 12 years. One bag. I walked back through the living room. Family photos on the mantel were face down. Vanessa was pointing at light fixtures, talking about upgrades. She did not look at me. The officers walked me out. Steady rain. Cold April rain, soaking my jacket in seconds. Do not come back without a court order, the crew cut said. They drove away. I stood on the sidewalk under a yellow streetlight. My phone buzzed. Darnell. Dad, stop making scenes. Vanessa told me everything. I already made arrangements. Greystone Manor has a room. It is a good facility. Go there. You are too old to be on your own. Do not contact us until you are settled. Greystone Manor. Everyone in Detroit knew Greystone. Fluorescent lights, the smell of bleach and urine. A place where you stared at ceiling tiles until your heart stopped. He was not just kicking me out. He was discarding me. I stood in the rain reading that message over and over. Water ran down my face, and I could not tell if it was rain or tears. Then my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. 422 Beaubien Street. Iron door. Knock 3 times. I am waiting. See. I looked up at the apartment. Vanessa's shadow moved behind warm curtains. I turned my back on it. I gripped my bag and started walking east. Toward the warehouse district. Toward the iron door. Toward the only person who showed me kindness tonight. The rain did not let up. But I kept walking. The walk took 30 minutes. The rain turned my suit into a cold second skin. My bad knee screamed with every step, but I kept moving east, past the last of the lit storefronts, past the boarded-up row houses, into the industrial district, where Detroit's manufacturing glory had gone to rot. Beaubien Street was dark. The streetlights here had been broken for years, and nobody cared enough to fix them. The buildings were hulking shapes against the orange city glow. Brick warehouses with empty windows like dead eyes. Chain-link fences sagging under the weight of rust. The smell of river water and old motor oil hung in the damp air. 2 was the worst of them. A 3-story brick box with plywood over every window. Graffiti covered the walls in layers so thick the original brick was barely visible. Warning stickers peeled from the rusted steel door. Condemned. No trespassing. Hazardous structure. I almost turned around. My body was telling me this was wrong. That no sane man walks into a condemned building at midnight because a stranger on a bus told him to. But then I thought about where else I could go. The bus shelter. A park bench. Greystone Manor. I walked up to the iron door. I knocked 3 times. For 5 seconds, nothing. Just the rain drumming on the metal awning above me and the distant wail of a freight train. Then I heard a mechanical click, a whirring sound behind the steel. The door swung inward on silent hinges. Clem stood in the doorway. He was still wearing the trench coat, still smelling like wet newspaper. But he was smiling. "You came," he said. "Good." I was starting to worry. I did not have anywhere else to go, I said honestly. He stepped aside and gestured me in. The vestibule was small but clean. Polished steel walls. A single elevator door, with no call button. The contrast with the exterior was so jarring my brain struggled to process it. Outside, a condemned ruin. Inside, a vault. Clem reached into his coat and pulled out a sleek black card. He pressed it against a panel hidden behind what looked like a cracked brick. A green light pulsed. He then leaned toward a small lens, mounted at eye level. A retinal scanner. The elevator doors slid open without a sound. We stepped inside. He pressed the only button. Top floor. The ride was smooth and fast. When the doors opened, I gasped. We were in a penthouse. But not just any penthouse. It was a cathedral of music and luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the rain-soaked city. The lights of downtown Detroit, sparkling like scattered jewels. The floors were dark oak, polished to a mirror shine. A fireplace crackled in the far corner, filling the space with warmth and the smell of cedar. But it was the other details that stopped me cold. A Steinway grand piano sat in the center of the room, its black lacquer reflecting the firelight. The walls were lined with framed awards. I stepped closer. Grammy Awards, Tony Awards, a Kennedy Center Honor, an Academy Award for Best Original Score, all bearing the same name, Clement Ashworth. On a side table, stacks of handwritten sheet music sat in neat piles. The paper was yellowed with age, covered in notations so dense and intricate it looked like a secret language. Next to them, framed photographs, Clem shaking hands with presidents, Clem conducting orchestras in Vienna, London, Tokyo. Clem walked past me. He shrugged off the filthy trench coat and tossed it on the floor like a snake shedding its skin. Underneath, he was wearing a simple black turtleneck and gray slacks. He moved to a bar cart in the corner and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. He turned around, and I saw him clearly for the first time. Without the coat and the hunched posture, he stood straight and tall. His frame was lean, but strong. His face, freed from the shadow of the hood, was angular and sharp, the same face from the portrait in Orchestra Hall. Older now, weathered, but unmistakable. He handed me a glass. "Sit down, Raymond. You look like you are about to collapse." I sank into a leather armchair near the fire. The warmth seeped into my bones immediately. I took a sip of the whiskey. It was smooth and complex. Nothing like the cheap bourbon I bought on pension day. "Clem," I said. My voice was barely a whisper. "Who are you?" "I saw the portrait. I saw the name. But you are supposed to be dead." Clem settled into the chair opposite me. He swirled his glass, watching the firelight dance through the amber liquid. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "My real name is Clement Ashworth. I founded the Detroit Metropolitan Symphony in 1978. I conducted it for 36 years. I composed 47 symphonies, 12 film scores, and 3 operas. My work has been performed in every major concert hall on earth." He took a sip. "And 10 years ago, the world believes I died of a heart attack in this very building." "You faked your death," I said. "It was not a question." Clem nodded. "I had to. My children, 3 of them, 2 sons and a daughter. They filed for conservatorship. They told a judge I was senile, that I was giving away money recklessly, that I could not manage my own affairs." He set his glass down. "What they really wanted was control of my catalog. $340 million in publishing rights, licensing fees, royalties. They did not want a father. They wanted an ATM." I felt a cold recognition spread through my chest. His story was a mirror held up to mine. "I fought them in court," Clem continued. "I won. But winning cost me everything that mattered. Looking across that courtroom at my own blood, watching them lie to a judge about my mind, that kills something inside you that does not grow back. I know that feeling," I said quietly. Clem leaned forward. His blue eyes caught the firelight. "After the trial, I disappeared. I let the world think Clement Ashworth was dead. I started dressing like a vagrant, riding buses, sitting in parks. I wanted to see how people treated me when they believed I had nothing." He pointed at me. "And today, Raymond, you showed me who you are. You had $6 to your name, and you spent 2 of them on a stranger who smelled like garbage. That tells me everything." He reached into the pocket of his discarded coat and pulled out the broken music box. He set it on the table between us. The cracked glass caught the firelight. "But there is something else, Raymond. Something you need to understand about tonight." He opened the lid. The mechanism stuttered, grinding, but a few broken notes came through. That melody. He tapped the brass cylinder with one finger. "I wrote this. 1994. Every note, every rest. It is mine. I stared at him. That is impossible. Darnell composed that when he was 8 years old. Clem shook his head slowly. No, Raymond. He did not. The room tilted. I set my glass down before I dropped it. What do you mean he did not compose it? I was there. He was 8 years old. He hummed it to me in the garage. My wife wrote it on a napkin. Clem stood up and walked to the piano. He sat on the bench and placed his fingers on the keys. Without looking at me, he played the melody. The same 8 bars. The same rises and falls. But he did not stop at 8 bars. He kept going. The melody expanded, grew, twisted into something vast and complex. Layers built upon layers. What had been a simple tune became an ocean. He played for 2 full minutes, then lifted his hands from the keys. The silence that followed felt like the inside of a cathedral. That, Clem said, turning to face me, is the opening theme of my Symphony No. 48. I composed it in 1994. I was living in a cabin in northern Michigan, grieving my wife. I wrote the entire piece in 6 weeks, 93 pages of manuscript. It was the most personal work I ever created. He paused, and I never published it. Why not? I asked. My throat was dry, because it was too raw, too honest. It was about loss, Raymond. About watching someone you love disappear one breath at a time. I was not ready to share that with the world. So I locked the manuscript in the archives of the Detroit Conservatory, where I was a founding board member. I sealed it with instructions that it not be opened until 20 years after my death. The Detroit Conservatory, where Darnell studied. Clem nodded slowly. Yes. Where your son studied. Where he had access to the archives. As a graduate fellow. I shook my head. No. He was 8. He hummed me that melody when he was 8 years old. That was 1998. 4 years after you wrote it. Clem's eyes softened. Raymond, your son was a gifted child. He had perfect pitch. He could hear a melody once and reproduce it exactly. I taught master classes at the conservatory when he was young. Saturday workshops for prodigies. Your wife brought him. I remember a small boy with enormous eyes who sat in the front row and absorbed everything like a sponge. I remembered. Lorraine driving Darnell across town every Saturday morning, coming home excited, humming new melodies. I had assumed they were his. He heard me working on the piece during a class, Clem said gently. He was too young to understand what he was hearing. He absorbed it, carried it home, and gave it to you as his own. He was not lying. He genuinely believed it was his by the time he hummed it in your garage. I felt something shift inside me. A foundation cracking. But the symphony, I said. The one he performed tonight. That is the same piece? Clem's face hardened. Yes and no. He stood and walked to a side table. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick red folder. He set it on the coffee table between us. Let me tell you about a young man named Min Tran. He opened the folder. Inside were photographs. A young Asian man, maybe late 20s, with sharp features and gentle eyes. He was sitting at a piano in one photo, his hands blurred with motion. In another, he was holding a stack of manuscript pages, smiling proudly. Min Tran, Clem said. 28 years old. Vietnamese American. A doctoral candidate at the conservatory. Brilliant. Possibly the most gifted composer of his generation. He found my sealed manuscript in the archives 2 years ago. He was doing research on lost works. Somehow he accessed the sealed collection. He found Symphony No. 48. Clem tapped the photograph. Min did what any true artist would do. He studied it. He fell in love with it. And then he did something extraordinary. He completed it. My original manuscript was 93 pages. Min expanded it to 212. He added 3 movements, a choral section, and a finale that brought me to tears when I heard the recording. He stole your work, I said. No. Clem shook his head firmly. Min honored my work. He built upon it with genius and humility. He credited me in his notes. He planned to premiere it as a collaboration. Ashworth and Tran, the dead and the living. It was beautiful. Then what happened? Clem's jaw tightened. Your son happened. Darnell was on the faculty review board. He saw Min's thesis presentation. He heard the symphony, and he wanted it. Not to perform it with Min. He wanted it as his own. I felt sick. My stomach clenched like a fist around a bolt. Darnell went to Min privately. Clem continued. He told Min that the original manuscript was by an unknown composer, not by me. He said the archives had no record of authorship. He told Min that if he did not hand over the completed symphony, Darnell would report him for unauthorized access to sealed materials. Expulsion, blacklisting, career over. Before it started, Min refused, I said, hoping. Clem nodded. Min refused. So Darnell flipped the accusation. He reported Min to the board for plagiarism. Said Min had stolen the work from Darnell's own private compositions. The board believed the faculty member over the student. Min lost his scholarship. His doctoral candidacy was revoked. His reputation was destroyed overnight. I closed my eyes. The image of Darnell, in his perfect tuxedo, laughing with board members, flashed behind my eyelids. The confidence, the ease, all built on a stolen foundation. Where is Min now? I asked. Clem's voice dropped. He disappeared 6 months ago. His family filed a missing persons report. The police found nothing. He paused. But my investigators did. They found him 3 weeks ago. He is living in a homeless shelter in Mexican town. He does not speak anymore, Raymond. The trauma of what your son did, the public humiliation, the destruction of his life's work, it broke something in him. He communicates only through writing, and what he writes is music. Constantly, on napkins, on walls, on his own skin. The symphony lives inside him like a ghost he cannot exorcise. I opened my eyes. The fire crackled. The rain streaked down the massive windows. My son had not just stolen a piece of music. He had stolen a man's voice. He had broken a human being so completely that the only language left was the one Darnell had tried to take from him. My son is a monster, I whispered. Clem closed the red folder. Your son is desperate, he said. And desperate men do monstrous things. But that is not the end of this story, Raymond. He leaned forward. This Saturday night, Darnell performs the symphony again. Full production. 2,000 seats. Grammy committee in the front row. National television broadcast. It will be the crowning achievement of his career. He fixed me with those ice blue eyes. Unless someone stops him. Unless the real composer is standing on that stage. Unless the dead rise from the grave and reclaim what is theirs. I sat in that leather chair for a long time. The fire crackled and popped. The rain hammered against the windows. Everything I had believed about my son's talent, his genius, his rise, it was all built on theft. Every standing ovation, every glowing review, every handshake with a donor, all of it, paid for, with someone else's soul. How do you know all this? I asked finally. If you have been dead for 10 years, how did you find out about Min? Clem refilled his glass. Because I never stopped watching, he said. I have people, investigators, lawyers, a small team that monitors the conservatory and my catalog. When Darnell announced his debut symphony last year, my people obtained a recording of the rehearsal. He looked at me. I heard the first 4 bars and nearly put my fist through a wall. It was my work, my grief, my love for my dead wife, coming out of the speakers in the hands of a thief. He set his glass down hard. I traced it back. I found Min's academic records. I found the sealed archive access logs. I found the disciplinary hearing transcripts. Your son covered his tracks well, but not well enough. Min left a paper trail, emails to his advisor begging for help. A formal complaint that was buried by the faculty board because Darnell sat on that board. And nobody listened, I said. Nobody with power. Clem corrected. Min was a foreign student on scholarship. Darnell was a rising star with connections. The institution chose the man who could bring them prestige and donations. Min was expendable. I thought about Darnell at 8 years old, sitting on that oil drum in my garage, humming melodies he had absorbed from a Saturday class. I thought about Lorraine driving him across town every week, working extra shifts to pay for his lessons. All that sacrifice, and the boy we raised became a predator who fed on weaker men. There is more. Raymond, Clem said. His voice was careful now, measured. I need you to understand why your son is so desperate. Why he threw you out tonight. Why he wants you locked in Greystone. Tell me, I said. I was past the point of being surprised. Clem opened the red folder again and pulled out a second set of documents. Bank statements, wire transfers, a photograph of Darnell standing outside a nightclub in Greektown, shaking hands with a thick-necked man in a black leather jacket. 6 months ago, Darnell realized that Min might resurface, that someone might find him and hear his side of the story. There was also a witness, a recording engineer named James Park who was in the studio when Min laid down the original demo tracks of the completed symphony. Park had copies. Park could prove that Min performed the piece months before Darnell ever claimed it. Darnell needed that recording destroyed, I said, seeing the shape of it. Clem nodded. And he needed Park's silence. So he went to a man named Nikolai Petrov, Russian. Runs a music production company that is really a front for money laundering. Petrov has connections to people who make problems disappear. Darnell borrowed $400,000 from Petrov, used it to pay off Park and buy the original recording files. 400,000. I repeated. The number was absurd. It was more money than I had earned in my entire career at Ford. Petrov does not give loans, Clem continued. He gives leashes. The interest is 40%, compounding weekly. Your son owes close to $600,000 now, and Petrov's patience is running out. He tapped the bank statements. This is why Darnell needs your apartment sold. This is why he wants you declared incompetent. He needs access to your pension, your savings, the equity in that apartment, every dollar you have ever earned. He needs it to keep Petrov from breaking his hands. I stared at the photograph of my son with the man in the leather jacket. The man had dead eyes. The kind of eyes I had seen in men on the factory floor who had come back from prison. No warmth, no hesitation. He would kill Darnell? I asked. Worse, Clem said. He would take his hands first. A conductor without hands. A pianist without fingers. Then, if the debt remains unpaid, yes, he would kill him. A father's instinct surged in me. Even after everything. Even after the spit, and the trash can, and the locked door, and the police. My son was in danger. Real danger. The kind that ends in a body in the river. We have to help him, I said before I could stop myself. Clem held up a hand. No. We have to stop him. There is a difference. If we pay his debt, he learns nothing. He will steal again. He will borrow again. He will destroy another Min. We save him by taking away his power to hurt anyone else. We save him by exposing the truth. He closed the folder. Saturday night. 2,000 people. National broadcast. The Grammy committee will be watching. I will walk onto that stage and prove the symphony is mine. Min will be there to testify. Your son's career ends. His credibility ends. And when Petrov sees that his investment is worthless, that Darnell has no future earnings to collect against, he will write off the debt. A dead career is not worth chasing. And if Petrov does not write it off? I asked. Then your son will have to run, Clem said simply. The way men have always run from debts they cannot pay. But he will be alive. And he will be free of the lie. I looked at the broken music box sitting on the table. The cracked glass. The bent gears. 2 years of work. A lifetime of belief. All shattered. Are you with me, Raymond? Clem asked. I picked up the music box. I held it in my rough hands, feeling the weight of it, the weight of what it represented. A lie I had cherished. A truth I could not escape. I am with you, I said. Clem nodded. His face was grim but satisfied. Good. We have 4 days. Tomorrow we find Min. Thursday we prepare the evidence. Friday, we visit my lawyers. And Saturday night, he smiled that wolfish grin. Saturday night, the dead walk. I woke Wednesday morning to sunlight streaming through the penthouse windows. For 3 seconds I forgot where I was. Then it all came flooding back. Clem was at the dining table reading a tablet, coffee steaming beside him. Before he could speak, a buzzing came from the console near the elevator. A man in a cheap suit stood in the vestibule downstairs holding a manila envelope. Delivery for Raymond Jackson. My blood went cold. How did they find me? Your phone, Clem said. They are tracking it. The man came up and thrust the envelope into my hands. You have been served, Mr. Jackson. I tore it open. Superior Court of Wayne County. Emergency petition for guardianship. The document claimed advanced dementia. Violence toward Vanessa. Attached was an affidavit from a doctor, Marcus Webb, claiming he examined me 2 months ago. I never met a Dr. Webb, I said. The hearing is today, Clem said, reading over my shoulder. 2 o'clock. They are moving fast because you have no lawyer. He thought for a moment. Go. Represent yourself. Stall. I will be in the gallery. Judge Harrison and I have history. 2 hours later, I stood in a courtroom smelling of floor polish and anxiety. Alone at the defendant's table. Darnell sat across the aisle in a gray suit. Eyes red-rimmed. His lawyer, Holt, was silver-haired and predatory. Vanessa sat behind them in black, dabbing invisible tears. Holt presented the case. Medical affidavit. Police report. Then Darnell took the stand. Trembling voice. Wet eyes. I love my father, he said, but the man sitting there is not the man who raised me. He needs professional care. I stood up. Your Honor, that doctor never examined me. The police were called because my locks were changed and my daughter-in-law lied. Do you have evidence to refute the medical report? The judge asked. I had nothing. I was about to lose my freedom. Then the courtroom doors creaked open. Clem walked in wearing a modest suit, hair combed back, beard trimmed. He sat in the back row. Judge Harrison glanced up, passed over Clem, then snapped back. I saw recognition flash across his face. The judge cleared his throat. Mr. Holt, I need more time to review this evidence. One affidavit is insufficient to strip a man of his rights. I am ordering an independent evaluation, adjourned for 72 hours. The gavel banged. Darnell leaned toward Holt, whispering furiously. It was over. For now. I walked out into pale afternoon sunlight. Free. 72 hours. A hand grabbed my arm from behind. Hard. Painful. Darnell. The mask was gone. His face tight with rage. You think this changes anything? He hissed. You think some old man in the gallery scares me? Let go of me, Darnell. He squeezed harder. Listen carefully, old man. You are going to sign those papers voluntarily. Tomorrow. Or things get difficult. What does that mean? He leaned close. His voice dropped. Old men fall downstairs every day in this city. People with dementia wander into traffic. He smiled a dead smile. Be smart, Dad. Sign the papers. Disappear quietly. Or I will help you disappear. He shoved me backward and walked away. His shoes clicked on the courthouse steps until traffic swallowed the sound. I stood there shaking. My son had just threatened to kill me. A black sedan pulled to the curb. Window down. Clem. Get in, Raymond. I got in. He threatened me, I said. He said accidents happen. Clem held up his phone. Audio waveform on screen. I heard. I had my phone recording near the steps. He put the car in gear. Tomorrow night, your son will invite you to dinner. He will apologize. He will try one more time for your signature. And you are going to go. He reached into the glove compartment. A small black device, no bigger than a quarter, military grade. Transmits to a cloud server. Picks up a whisper across a room. He also pulled out a small tin. Wax, he said. Rub it on your thumb before you go in. If they force you to sign or print, the wax disrupts the ridges. Looks real to the eye, but useless in court. He handed me both items. Tomorrow night, you let him confess everything. You let him think he has won. And Saturday, the whole world hears it. What if something goes wrong? I asked. What if they try to grab me? Clem looked at me. His blue eyes were steady. If you feel unsafe, say the word staccato. I will have a team listening. We will be through the door in 15 seconds. Staccato, I repeated. It means short and detached, Clem said. Which is exactly what your son's freedom is about to become. The call came Thursday afternoon. Exactly as Clem predicted. Vanessa's voice was sweet like syrup, poured over poison. Dad, we are so worried about you. Terrence feels terrible about the courthouse. We handled everything wrong. Please come to dinner tonight. Just family. No lawyers. We want to make things right. We are making barbecue ribs. Your favorite. My favorite was catfish. She did not even know. I will be there, I said. 7 o'clock. I hung up and looked at Clem. He was assembling something on the kitchen table. Documents. Photographs. A laptop. Showing bank records. His war room. Ribs, Clem said without looking up. They are going to try to drug you. Do not eat. Do not drink. Not even water from a glass they hand you. At 6:30, I stood in front of the penthouse mirror. I was wearing my own clothes again, the frayed suit, the work boots. Clem insisted. You need to look like the man they expect, he said. Weak. Confused. Desperate to come home. Let them underestimate you. I pressed the small black device under my collar. It was warm against my skin. I rubbed the wax onto my right thumb, working it into the ridges until it was invisible. My hands were steady. 40 years of precision work. A mechanic's hands do not shake when it matters. Clem drove me to within 2 blocks of the apartment. Go, he said. I will be parked on the next street. The device transmits in real time. I hear everything. If you say staccato, my team is through the door in 15 seconds. I nodded and got out of the car. The walk to my old building felt like walking to the executioner. I climbed the stairs. I knocked. Vanessa opened the door. Floral apron. Hair down. Warm smile. She threw her arms around me. Dad, you came. Thank God. The perfume was suffocating. I patted her back stiffly. I just want to come home, I said, letting my voice tremble. Inside, the apartment smelled of barbecue sauce and furniture polish. Candles on the table. The good plates. Darnell stood by the kitchen in a casual sweater, looking exhausted and penitent. He walked over and hugged me. Tight. Desperate. I am sorry, Dad, he mumbled. The stress, the concert, everything. I lost my way. I looked over his shoulder. The wall where Lorraine's quilt used to hang was bare. It is okay, son, I said. I know you did not mean it. We sat. Vanessa served. The ribs looked perfect. My stomach was a knot of iron. I pushed the meat around my plate. Not hungry, Dad? Darnell watched me closely. Stomach is upset. The stress. They talked. They apologized for the police. For the locks. They blamed it on panic. We just want you safe, Darnell said, pouring himself wine. That is all we ever wanted. Maybe you belong here with us. I saw the sweat on his forehead. The bounce of his leg under the table. He was not talking about safety. He was running out of time. Petrov's deadline was approaching. Then the turn. Darnell reached under his chair and pulled out a leather portfolio. He placed it on the table. Dad, since you are moving back in, we need to handle things properly. No more misunderstandings. He opened it. A thick document. Legal language. Terrence just needs your signature. A formality. I put on my reading glasses. I did not need to read it to know. Power of attorney. Voluntary surrender of guardianship. If I signed, I handed over my bank accounts, my pension, my freedom. I picked up the pen. Let my hand shake. I cannot read this, son. The print is too small. You do not need to read it, Darnell said, his voice tightening. I read it. It is standard. Just sign. I lowered the pen, then lifted it. Maybe I should show this to someone first. Darnell slammed his hand on the table. The wine glasses jumped. No lawyers. We agreed. Just family. Why do you not trust me? I do trust you, Terry, I said, using his childhood name. But I am scared. The air changed. The warmth evaporated. Darnell stood up. His chair scraped the floor. He walked around the table until he stood over me. His shadow fell across my plate. We do not have time for you to be scared, he hissed. Sign the paper. What do you mean you do not have time? The dam broke. Because I need the money, he shouted. His face was red, twisted. I owe $400,000, Dad. Do you understand? I borrowed it from dangerous people. To protect myself. To protect the recording. If I do not pay them back, they will destroy everything. They will destroy me. The recording, I said softly. What recording? He was too far gone to stop. The original recording. The one that proves I did not write the symphony. There was a witness. A sound engineer. He had files. I had to buy his silence. I had to pay Petrov to make the problem go away. And now Petrov wants his money back, and I have nothing. Every word recorded. Every confession captured. Now sign, he roared. He grabbed my wrist. He pulled an ink pad from the portfolio. Press your thumb. Now, I let him see my fear. Please, Terry. He smashed my thumb onto the ink pad, then ground it against the paper. The wax did its work. The print looked real, but the ridges were gone. There, he said, panting. He snatched the paper, locked it in a drawer. He straightened his sweater. You did the right thing, Dad. His voice was suddenly calm. Can I go to my room now? I asked. I am tired. Darnell laughed. A cold sound. Your room. We sold the apartment this morning. Buyers take possession Monday. He pulled out his phone. I called Greystone. They are sending a van. He walked to the front door and opened it. The night air rushed in. 2 men stood on the landing. White scrubs. One held a strap. The other held a syringe. He might be resistant, Darnell told them. The dementia makes him confused. The men stepped forward. The needle caught the hallway light. The needle caught the light first. A 4-inch syringe filled with something the color of weak tea. The woman holding it smiled the way people smile at dogs they intend to put down. Mr. Jackson, she said. This will help you relax. I stepped back. My spine hit the dining table. Vanessa stood near the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, watching like she was overseeing a furniture delivery. Darnell had already disappeared into the hallway. The male orderly, a thick-necked man with a shaved head and forearms like engine blocks, moved to my left, cutting off the path to the front door. I am 71 years old. I have a torn rotator cuff in my right shoulder and a steel pin in my left knee from a press line accident in 1987. I was not going to fight my way out of that room, but I could talk. Staccato, I said. Not loud, not panicked. Just clear. The way you call out a part number on a noisy shop floor. The woman paused. Excuse me? Staccato, I repeated. Louder this time, aiming my voice at the collar of my jacket where the black disc sat like a button. Nothing happened. 3 seconds. 5. The orderly grabbed my left wrist. His grip was professional, fingers finding the pressure points between the tendons. Pain shot up to my elbow. Hold still, sir. You'll feel a small pinch. I twisted. Not to escape. To buy time. I knocked a wine glass off the table. It shattered on the hardwood, and Vanessa cursed. Then the front door came off its hinges. Not a knock. Not a kick. The entire steel core door folded inward like cardboard, and 2 men in black tactical vests stepped through the gap. Behind them, idling at the curb with its headlights blazing white across the lawn, sat an armored black Suburban with no plates. The first man pointed a flashlight beam directly into the orderly's eyes. Release him. Now. The orderly released me. The woman with the syringe dropped it. It hit the floor and rolled under the couch. Vanessa pressed herself against the refrigerator, mouth open, no sound coming out. A third figure appeared in the doorframe. Clem. He wore the same ragged trench coat, but his posture had changed. Shoulders back. Chin raised. Eyes the color of a January sky, scanning the room the way a conductor scans an orchestra before the downbeat. Raymond, he said calmly. Walk to me. I walked. My knee screamed. I did not care. I crossed the living room in 6 steps and passed through the broken doorframe into the cold Detroit night. One of the tactical men draped a blanket over my shoulders and guided me into the back seat of the Suburban. The leather was warm. A screen on the headrest displayed a green waveform, the audio feed from my collar still recording. Clem slid in beside me. The door closed with the heavy thunk of armored steel, meeting armored steel. The vehicle pulled away before I could exhale. You got it? I asked. Clem reached into his coat pocket and produced a phone. He tapped play. Darnell's voice filled the cabin, sharp and desperate. 400,000, Dad. Petrov will kill me. Sign the paper or I swear to God you'll die in that nursing home. Every word. Clear as a bell. I leaned back and closed my eyes. That confession, Clem said, is now on 3 separate encrypted servers. His attorney cannot suppress it. The police cannot lose it. And on Saturday night, 2,000 people will hear it through concert hall speakers. The Suburban turned onto Michigan Avenue, heading east toward the warehouse district. Rain hit the bulletproof glass in sheets. I watched the streetlights blur. There is something else, Clem said. He handed me a tablet. On the screen, a video. Paused on the first frame. A young man sitting on a metal cot in a dim room. Thin, dark hair falling across his forehead. Eyes open but empty. Staring at a point beyond the camera. Min Tran, Clem said. Recorded 6 days ago at the Holy Cross shelter on Werner Highway. He hasn't spoken in 14 months, but he writes music. Every day. On napkins, on the backs of donation forms, on the walls of his room when they take away the paper. I looked at the frozen image. 28 years old. The same age Darnell was when I sold my garage to pay his first semester at the conservatory. He wrote the symphony, I said. He wrote the symphony, Clem confirmed. All 212 pages. The choral arrangement. The finale. Every note your son is rehearsing right now belongs to that boy. I touched the screen. The video played. Min's hand moved across a sheet of paper, drawing eighth notes in tight clusters. His lips moved, but no sound came. A staff member entered the frame, placed a cup of water beside him. Min did not look up. We go to him tomorrow, Clem said. Friday morning. We bring him proof that the world will know his name. And we ask him one question. What question? Clem's reflection appeared in the dark window beside me. For a moment he looked every one of his 79 years, whether he wants to stand on that stage Saturday night, and let them hear his voice again, even if that voice is silence, even if all he does is hold up the original manuscript and let the ink speak for him. The Suburban stopped at a red light. Somewhere in the distance, a freight train sounded its horn, low and long, the same pitch as the opening note of Symphony No. 48. I thought about Min writing on walls. I thought about my music box in Clem's pocket, still broken, still holding its 8 bars of stolen melody. I thought about Darnell on that stage Saturday, raising a baton he had no right to hold. We go to him tomorrow, I said. Clem nodded once. The light turned green. We drove into the dark. Friday morning. 6:14 a.m. The sky over Detroit was the color of old motor oil. Thick clouds pressing down on the rooftops like a hand, trying to hold something underwater. Clem's driver dropped us 3 blocks from the Holy Cross shelter on Verner Highway. Clem insisted we walk the rest. He wore his torn trench coat again, the one that smelled of wet wool and bus exhaust. I asked him why. Because Min has not spoken to a living soul in 14 months, Clem said. If a billionaire walks through that door, he will shut down. If 2 old men walk through that door, he might look up. The shelter was a converted Catholic school. Red brick, arched windows, a statue of the Virgin Mary missing her left hand. A woman at the front desk, mid-30s, hair pulled back tight, looked at us over reading glasses. Visiting hours start at 9, she said. Clem placed a folded $20 bill on the counter. Not as a bribe, as a donation. He pointed to the glass jar beside the sign-in sheet. We're here for Min Tron, he said. Room 12. His uncle sent us. The woman studied us for a long moment. Then she wrote our names on a clipboard and buzzed the inner door open. The hallway smelled of bleach and canned soup. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, one of them flickering in a rhythm that reminded me of a turn signal. We passed rooms with open doors. Men sleeping on cots. A teenager drawing on the wall with a crayon. An old woman talking to no one. Room 12 was at the end of the corridor. The door was closed. A sheet of paper had been taped to it at eye level. On it, in tiny handwriting, so dense it looked like printed text, were musical notes. Hundreds of them. No staff lines. Just noteheads and stems floating across the page like birds frozen mid-flight. Clem touched the paper with one finger. His hand trembled. That is the 4th movement, he whispered. The one I never finished. He knocked twice. No answer. He pushed the door open. Min Tran sat cross-legged on a metal cot, his back against the cinder block wall. He was smaller than I expected. 5'6", maybe 120 pounds. His black hair hung past his ears, unwashed. He wore a gray shelter-issued sweatshirt 3 sizes too large and held a ballpoint pen in his right hand. On the wall beside him, covering every inch of painted concrete from the pillow to the window frame, were musical notations. Thousands of notes, written directly on the wall in blue ink. Some sections had been crossed out and rewritten above in red. He did not look up when we entered. Clem pulled the only chair in the room to the foot of the cot and sat down. I stood near the door, unsure of what to do with my hands. The room was 8 feet by 10 feet. A sink, a window with steel mesh over the glass, a shelf holding a Bible, a cup of pens, and a stack of napkins covered in more music. Min, Clem said softly. My name is Clement Ashworth. Min's pen stopped. His eyes stayed on the wall, but his hand froze, the tip of the pen still touching the concrete. I wrote the first 8 bars. Clem continued. In 1994. In a studio on Cass Avenue, 3 blocks from here. I sealed the manuscript because I was afraid of it. afraid that it was better than anything I had written before and that I would never match it again. Min's breathing changed. Faster. His chest rose and fell beneath the oversized sweatshirt. You found it, Clem said. And you did what I could not. You finished it. 212 pages. 3 new movements. A choral section that I have read 40 times and still cannot believe came from a human hand. Min turned his head. Slowly. Like a man who has forgotten how the muscles in his neck work. His eyes found Clem's face. They were dark brown, almost black, and they held something I recognized. Not hope. Not yet. Something before hope. The moment before a frozen engine turns over on a January morning. That half-second of silence between the key turning and the pistons firing. Clem reached into his coat and pulled out a manila folder. He opened it on the cot beside Min's knee. Inside, photocopies of Min's original manuscript pages, date-stamped by the Detroit Conservatory Archive. Emails from Min to Darnell, marked 2023, asking for his work to be returned. A disciplinary hearing transcript with highlighted passages where Darnell accused Min of plagiarism. A newspaper clipping from the Detroit Free Press announcing Darnell's original composition. Min's eyes moved across each page. His free hand, the left one, curled into a fist on his thigh. Tomorrow night, Clem said. Your symphony will be performed in front of 2,000 people. National television. Grammy committee, in the 5th row. And the man holding the baton will be introduced as its composer. A sound came from Min. Not a word. A breath that wanted to be a word, but couldn't find its shape. His lips parted, his throat moved, but nothing came out except air. I am asking you one thing, Clem said. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Will you stand on that stage tomorrow and let them see you? You do not have to speak. You do not have to perform. You only have to hold your manuscript and let the world know it belongs to you. Min looked at the folder, then at the wall of music he had written in his solitude, then at Clem, then, for the first time, at me. I don't know what he saw. An old mechanic in a wrinkled jacket, grease still under 2 fingernails that 40 years of soap had never fully cleaned. But I held his gaze and nodded once. The way you nod at a man across a shop floor when the foreman isn't looking. A nod that says, I see you. I believe you. Min picked up a napkin from the shelf. He wrote 3 words in that same impossibly small handwriting and held it up. I will stand. Clem closed his eyes. His jaw tightened. For 5 full seconds he said nothing. Then he stood, folded the napkin carefully, and placed it in his breast pocket. Then we have work to do, he said. We spent the next 2 hours in that room. Clem's team delivered a garment bag containing a tailored black suit, white shirt, and leather shoes in Min's size. A barber arrived at 8:30, trimmed Min's hair, shaved his face. A doctor checked his vitals, declared him physically fit. A lawyer presented documents. A sworn affidavit of authorship. A copyright filing backdated to Min's original submission. A restraining order against Darnell Jackson. By 10 a.m., Min Tran stood in front of the small bathroom mirror, looking like a different man. The suit fit perfectly. His hair was short and neat. His eyes still held that distance, that silence. But his spine was straight, and his chin was level. He wrote one more note and handed it to me. Thank you for seeing me. I folded it and put it in my shirt pocket, next to the space where my heart beat against my ribs like a piston that refused to quit. Tomorrow. Saturday. The dead would walk. Saturday. 7:43 p.m. Orchestra Hall. I had not been inside this building since Tuesday night, when my son's security guard gripped my arm and marched me through the lobby like a stray dog caught in a banquet hall. 4 days. It felt like 4 years. Clem's people had arranged everything. 3 seats in the 12th row. Center section. Close enough to see the sweat on Darnell's forehead when he raised the baton. far enough to remain invisible until the moment came. I wore a charcoal suit I hadn't owned on Tuesday. Clem had it tailored Thursday afternoon. It fit better than anything I'd worn in 40 years of coveralls and steel-toed boots. Min sat between us. His hands rested flat on his thighs. He had not written a single note since we left the shelter yesterday. No napkins, no walls. As if every word left inside him was being saved for tonight. The hall filled around us. 2,000 seats. Crystal chandeliers casting warm gold across red velvet. Women in gowns. Men in tuxedos that cost more than my pension check. In the 5th row, I spotted the Grammy committee. 6 men and women with lanyards and leather portfolios. A television crew from PBS set up cameras on tripods along the left aisle. This was Darnell's night, his coronation. At 7:55, the house lights dimmed twice. The murmur of conversation faded like an engine shutting down cylinder by cylinder. Musicians filed onto the stage. 72 of them. Violins, violas, cellos, basses, woodwinds, brass, percussion, a 40-voice choir arranged in risers behind the orchestra, all of them dressed in black, faces serious. Instruments gleaming under stage light. Then Darnell appeared from the wings. He wore a white dinner jacket. Custom. Gold cufflinks catching the spotlight. His shoes clicked against the hardwood stage with the confidence of a man who believed he owned every note about to fill this room. The audience erupted, standing ovation before a single sound had been played. 2,000 people on their feet for my son. I stayed seated. So did Clem. So did Min. Darnell bowed. Once. Twice. He turned to face the orchestra, picked up the baton from the music stand, and raised it above his head. The hall went silent. 2,000 people, holding their breath. The baton came down. The first 8 bars filled the room like water filling a dry riverbed. The same melody. The one from my music box. The one Clem composed in 1994 on Cass Avenue. The one Min expanded into 212 pages of genius. It started with a single oboe. Then the strings entered. Then the brass. Building like a storm, assembling itself piece by piece over Lake Erie. Min's right hand twitched on his thigh. His index finger moved, tracing the notes in the air the way a mother traces the outline of a child's face in sleep. He knew every measure, every rest, every dynamic marking, because they were his. The first movement lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, the audience applauded. Darnell turned, bowed again, smiled that smile I hadn't seen directed at me since he was 12 years old and I taught him to change a tire in the driveway. The second movement began. Darker. Minor key. The cellos carrying a theme that sounded like grief given a voice. I thought of Lorraine. I thought of the garage I sold. I thought of every sacrifice I made that led to this night, where my son performed stolen work in front of cameras, while the true composer sat silent beside me. Clem checked his watch. 8:20:02. He leaned toward me. After the third movement, he whispered. During the pause before the finale, that is when the dead walk. The third movement was violent. Percussion driving forward like pistons. Brass screaming. The choir entering with a wordless vocalization that raised the hair on my arms. 2,000 people sat motionless, hypnotized. Even the PBS cameraman forgot to pan. Then it ended. Silence. The kind of silence that only exists in a concert hall between movements. The kind where you can hear your own blood moving. Darnell lowered his baton. He reached for a towel on the music stand and wiped his forehead. The audience shifted in their seats, preparing for the finale. That was when Clem stood. He did not rush. He did not shout. He simply rose from his seat. In the 12th row, the way a man rises from a pew in an empty church. Slowly. Deliberately. His trench coat was gone. Beneath it, he wore a black suit identical to the one in his portrait in the lobby. His silver hair was combed back. His steel blue eyes caught the stage light, reflected off the chandeliers. He stepped into the aisle. A murmur rippled through the audience. Heads turned. Someone in the third row whispered something that spread like fire across dry grass. I heard the word before it reached the back wall. Ashworth. Clem walked toward the stage. His footsteps were the only sound in the hall. Click, click, click. Each one landing on the beat of a metronome set to 60. He reached the steps at stage left and climbed them. One at a time. His hand trailing along the railing, Darnell turned. The baton was still in his right hand. His face went through 4 expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, terror. "That's impossible," Darnell said. His microphone was still live. The words carried to every seat, every camera, every recording device in the building. "You're dead." Clem reached the center of the stage. He stood 3 feet from my son. The orchestra members stared. The first violinist's bow slipped from her fingers and clattered on the floor. "I was dead," Clem said. His voice was quiet, but the hall's acoustics carried it like a bell. "For 10 years I was dead, and during those 10 years, a young man wrote the most beautiful symphony I have ever heard. And tonight, you stand here pretending it belongs to you." Darnell's hand began to shake. The baton trembled between his fingers, like a branch in a storm. Clem turned to face the audience. He raised one hand, palm open, toward the 12th row. "The composer," he said, "is in this room." 2,000 heads turned to where Clem pointed. To row 12. To the seat between mine and the empty one where Clem had been. Mintran stood. Slowly. The way a man stands who has forgotten what it feels like to be seen. His black suit sharp against the red velvet seats. His face pale. His eyes wet. He did not speak. He did not need to. He held up the original manuscript, 93 pages bound in a clear plastic cover, date stamped by the Detroit Conservatory, and raised it above his head. The hall erupted. The sound was not applause. Not yet. It was the sound of 2,000 people, exhaling at once. A collective gasp that rolled through the hall like thunder, crossing a flat Michigan plain. Then the voices started. Dozens of them. Overlapping. Confused. The Grammy committee members leaned toward each other, mouths moving fast. The PBS camera swung from the stage to row 12, its red recording light burning steady. A woman in the 4th row stood and pointed at the lobby portrait visible through the open doors. "That's him," she said. "That's Ashworth. He's alive." Clem stood center stage, 3 feet from Darnell, and did not move. He let the chaos build the way a composer lets dissonance build before resolving it. 10 seconds. 15. Then he raised his right hand, and the hall fell silent again. The authority in that gesture was absolute. 47 symphonies, 12 film scores, 3 operas, a lifetime of commanding silence from large rooms. "My name is Clement Ashworth," he said. His voice carried without amplification. The acoustics of Orchestra Hall did what they were built to do. I composed the first 8 bars of the work you heard tonight in 1994. I sealed the manuscript in the Detroit Conservatory archive because I believed it was unfinishable. I was wrong. He turned toward Min, who still stood in row 12 holding the bound pages above his head. In 2022, a doctoral candidate named Min Tran discovered that manuscript. Over 11 months, he completed it. 3 new movements, a choral arrangement, a finale that surpasses anything I have written in my life. He submitted it to the Conservatory Review Board for his dissertation. Clem paused. He looked at Darnell. My son had not moved. The baton hung limp in his hand. His white dinner jacket seemed too bright, under the stage lights, like a target. "The chairman of that review board," Clem said, "was Darnell Jackson." A sound came from the audience. Not a gasp this time. A low murmur. The sound of understanding arriving in real time. Mr. Jackson accused Min Tran of plagiarism. He convened a disciplinary hearing. He presented fabricated evidence that the work was derivative. Min Tran lost his scholarship, his reputation, and ultimately his ability to speak. Clem reached into his jacket and produced a remote control. He pressed a button. Behind the orchestra, on the screen normally used for projected lyrics during choral performances, an image appeared. A side-by-side comparison. On the left, Min's original manuscript pages, data stamped November 2022 by the conservatory librarian. On the right, Darnell's published score, dated March 2023, 4 months later. The notation was identical. Every note, every dynamic marking, every tempo indication. The only difference was the name on the title page. The murmur became louder. Someone in the back row shouted a word I will not repeat. Clem pressed the remote again. A new image. An email from Darnell to Min, dated January 2023. If you mention this to anyone, I will make sure you never work in music again. You are nothing. You are a foreign student with no connections and no proof. Walk away. The hall went so quiet I could hear the ventilation system humming above the chandeliers. Clem pressed once more. A third image. The disciplinary hearing transcript, with Darnell's testimony highlighted in yellow. I have never seen this student's work before. The composition is clearly derived from my own sketches, which I can produce upon request. He never produced those sketches, Clem said. Because they do not exist. Darnell dropped the baton. It hit the stage with a wooden clatter that the microphones amplified into a sound like a bone breaking. He took a step backward. This is insane, Darnell said. His voice cracked on the second word. This man has been dead for 10 years. This is a fraud. A stunt. Clem reached into his other pocket and produced a single sheet of paper. He held it up to the stage light. A DNA verification conducted Wednesday by the Wayne County Medical Examiner's Office, confirming my identity through comparison with archived medical records from 2014. Notarized. Filed with the probate court this morning. He set the paper on the music stand where Darnell's score had rested. Then Clem turned to Min again and extended his hand. Palm up. Toward the stage. Min, he said. The young man stepped into the aisle. His walk was slow but steady. Each step carried him closer to the stage. And with each step, the audience's attention shifted. By the time he reached the stairs, every camera in the building was pointed at him. The PBS director signaled his crew with frantic hand gestures. This was live. This could not be edited. Min climbed the steps. He crossed the stage. He stopped beside Clem, facing 2,000 people and 6 cameras, and the Grammy committee in their 5th-row seats. He held the manuscript against his chest. And then something happened that I did not expect. Min opened his mouth. No sound came at first. His lips moved. His throat worked. The muscles in his jaw tightened and released. Tightened and released. The silence stretched. 1 second. 2. 3. The entire hall leaned forward. Then a word. Small. Barely more than a whisper. But the acoustics caught it and carried it to every corner of that room. Mine. 1 word. 14 months of silence broken by a single syllable. Min's eyes were streaming, but his voice did not shake. He said it again. Louder. Mine. The audience rose. Not in sections, not row by row. All at once. 2,000 people on their feet. The applause came like a wave breaking against a seawall. It crashed and kept crashing. The choir members behind the orchestra began clapping. The first violinist picked up her bow and tapped it against her music stand. Others followed. A rhythmic tapping that merged with the applause into something that sounded almost like music itself. Darnell backed toward the wings. His face was gray. Sweat darkened the collar of his white jacket. He looked at me. Across the stage, past the orchestra, past the cameras, his eyes found mine in row 12. I did not look away. I did not smile. I did not shake my head. I simply held his gaze the way I held it when he was 9 years old, and I caught him stealing quarters from the coffee can on top of the refrigerator. The same look, the same silence, the same message. I see what you are. Darnell turned and disappeared into the wings. Clem placed his hand on Min's shoulder. The young man was shaking now, tears falling freely, but he stood straight. He held the manuscript above his head one more time, and the applause doubled. I sat in my seat in the 12th row. My hands were folded in my lap. My eyes burned, but I did not cry. Not yet. There was one more thing to do. The recording in my collar was still running. The applause was still shaking the walls when I stood up from row 12 and walked toward the aisle. No one noticed me. Every eye, every camera, every phone held above a head was pointed at the stage where Min Tran stood, with his manuscript raised and tears running down his face. Clem had his hand on the young man's shoulder. The orchestra members were on their feet. The choir was singing something wordless and soft, a hum that rose beneath the applause, like a river beneath ice. I moved against the current of attention. Down the aisle, past the PBS camera operator who was speaking rapidly into his headset, past the Grammy committee members who were already on their phones, past the ushers who had abandoned their posts at the doors. I turned left at the stage access corridor. The hallway was narrow. White walls, black linoleum, a fire extinguisher, a bulletin board covered in rehearsal schedules and union notices. At the end of the corridor, a door marked Stage Left, authorized personnel only. I pushed through it. Backstage smelled of rosin and old wood and nervous sweat. Musicians' cases lined the walls. A rack of black garment bags hung near a full-length mirror. And there, 15 feet from me, stood Darnell. He was pacing. Short, tight circles. His white dinner jacket was unbuttoned, his bow tie hanging loose. A phone pressed to his ear. His voice was a whisper stretched to breaking. "Get me out of here. I don't care how. Bring the car to the loading dock. 5 minutes. No. 3. 3 minutes." He turned and saw me. The phone lowered. His hand fell to his side. For a moment we stood there, father and son, in a backstage corridor that smelled like every garage I had ever worked in. Close. Oily. Nowhere to hide. "Dad," he said. The word came out like something he had forgotten how to pronounce. "Dad, listen. I can explain." "No," I said. "You can't." I reached under my collar and unclipped the recording device. It was smaller than a shirt button. Black. Warm from sitting against my skin for 2 days. I held it up, between my thumb and index finger. Darnell's eyes locked onto it. His face did something I had never seen before. It collapsed inward, like a building losing its foundation one floor at a time. The confidence, the arrogance, the contempt, all of it fell away. And what remained was a 34-year-old man who looked exactly like the boy who broke Mrs. Henderson's window with a baseball in 1996 and came to me shaking. "Thursday night," I said. "At your dinner table. You told me you owe $400,000 to a man named Petrov. You told me he would kill you. You told me to sign a paper or die in a nursing home. You pressed my thumb onto an ink pad. You called 2 people with a syringe to drug me." Each sentence landed like a wrench dropped on concrete. Darnell flinched at everyone. "Every word is on this device," I said. "And every word is already on 3 encrypted servers that your attorney cannot reach and the police cannot lose." Darnell's back hit the wall. He slid down it until he was sitting on the linoleum. His $1,000 shoes splayed out in front of him. His hands hung between his knees. "Dad," he said, "they'll destroy me." "You destroyed yourself," I said. The stage door opened behind me. 2 Detroit police officers stepped through, followed by a woman in a gray suit, carrying a badge on a lanyard. FBI. Behind her, another officer, and behind him, Vanessa. Vanessa was in handcuffs. Her face was a ruin. mascara streaked, lipstick smeared where she had bitten her lower lip hard enough to draw blood. She saw me, and her expression twisted into something between rage and terror. "You," she said. "You pathetic old—" "Mrs. Jackson," the FBI agent said, cutting her off. "You have already been advised of your rights. I suggest you exercise them." The agent turned to Darnell. "Darnell, Marcus, Jackson, you are under arrest for fraud, forgery, intellectual property theft, conspiracy to commit false imprisonment, and filing a fraudulent guardianship petition. Stand up, please." Darnell did not stand. He sat on that floor and looked at me. His eyes were wet. His lower lip trembled the way it used to tremble when he was 5 years old and fell off his bicycle in the driveway, and I would pick him up and carry him to the kitchen, where Lorraine would clean the scrape and put a bandage on it and tell him he was brave. I wanted to pick him up. God help me, I wanted to pick him up. But I thought of men writing on walls in a shelter. I thought of the needle coming toward my arm Thursday night. I thought of Lorraine's diary in my bag, the one Vanessa almost threw away with the rest of my life. "Stand up, son," I said. He stood. The officer turned him around and put his wrists in cuffs. The metal clicked twice. Vanessa was already being led down the corridor toward the loading dock, where a black sedan waited with its lights off. Darnell looked over his shoulder as they led him away. "Dad," he said. One more time. Like the word itself could undo everything. I held his gaze. I did not blink. I did not cry. I waited until he was through the door, and the sound of his shoes on concrete faded to nothing. Then I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. Clem found me there 3 minutes later. He did not speak. He simply stood beside me in that backstage corridor and waited. The way you wait beside a man who has just done the hardest thing he will ever do. After a while, I opened my eyes. "Is Min okay?" I asked. "He spoke 4 more words after you left," Clem said. He said, "I wrote this music." I nodded. Something loosened in my chest. A knot that had been tightening since Tuesday morning, when I wrapped that music box in brown paper and believed my son would smile. "What happens now?" I asked. Clem reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded napkin. The one Min had given me at the shelter. "Thank you for seeing me." He placed it in my hand. "Now," Clem said, "we let the law do what it does. And we go home." "I don't have a home," I said. Clem looked at me with those steel blue eyes. 79 years old. A man who had faked his own death to escape his children. A man who understood exactly what it cost to love someone who did not love you back. "You will," he said. "I'll pray for you, Raymond. And I'll make sure of it." We walked out through the loading dock into the Saturday night air. Detroit smelled of rain and exhaust and something almost like spring. The armored Suburban waited at the curb. Clem opened the door for me the way a son should open a door for his father. I climbed in. The leather was warm. The city lights blurred through the tinted glass. It was over. 3 days passed. I spent them in Clem's penthouse above the warehouse on Beaubien Street. I did not leave. I did not turn on the television. I did not answer the phone that Clem's assistant had given me, even though it rang 9 times on Sunday alone. Reporters. All of them. The story had broken wide open. PBS aired the footage Saturday night, and by Sunday morning, it was everywhere. Every network, every website, every radio station, between Detroit and Los Angeles. I sat in the leather chair by the window and watched the freight trains move along the tracks 3 blocks south. I counted the cars the way I used to count them with Darnell when he was 4 years old. Sitting on my shoulders at the crossing on Michigan Avenue. Boxcar, tanker, flatbed, hopper. He would clap every time the caboose appeared. On Monday evening, Clem came to me with a cup of coffee and a manila envelope. "From the county prosecutor's office," he said. "They need your formal statement by Wednesday." I took the envelope but did not open it. Instead, I asked the question I had been holding for 3 days. How long will he get? Clem sat on the arm of the couch across from me. He folded his hands. The fraud and forgery charges carry up to 10 years each. Intellectual property theft, another 5. The false imprisonment conspiracy adds 3 to 7. His attorney will negotiate. First offense, no violent priors. My estimate, 8 to 12 years. He will serve 5 with good behavior. 5 years. My son would be 39 when he walked out. I would be 76. If I was still walking at all. And Vanessa? She cooperated Sunday morning. Full statement. Implicated Petrov's organization in exchange for reduced charges. She will likely receive 3 to 4 years, perhaps 2 with a plea. I nodded. I drank the coffee. It was bitter and exactly right. Petrov? FBI raided his operation Sunday night. Seized records, accounts, 6 properties. He fled. Interpol has a warrant. He won't return to Michigan. I set the cup down and stared at the trains. A long silence filled the room. Clem did not break it. He understood silence, the way musicians understand rests. Not an absence of sound, but a presence of something else. I need to see him, I said. Clem did not ask who. He simply nodded and left the room. 20 minutes later, his driver took me to Wayne County Jail. The visiting room was gray. Plastic chairs bolted to the floor. A table with scratches so deep, they looked like someone had tried to carve their way out. Fluorescent light that made every face look 10 years older. A guard stood by the door with his arms crossed. Darnell came through the side entrance in an orange jumpsuit. No gold cufflinks. No white dinner jacket. No $1,000 shoes. Just canvas slip-ons. And a number on his chest. He sat down across from me. His eyes were red. His hands shook the way they used to shake before piano recitals when he was 11. And Lorraine would hold them between hers and say, "Play for the people who love you. Forget the rest." We sat in silence for 40 seconds. I counted. "I brought you something," I said. I reached into my jacket and pulled out Lorraine's diary. The one I had grabbed from the shelf Tuesday night when the police gave me 5 minutes. Faded green cover. Pages soft from years of handling. Her handwriting, small and neat, filled every line. I opened it to a page I had marked with a torn piece of newspaper. The 14th of June, 2009. Darnell's 18th birthday. I read aloud. Darnell played his composition tonight at the school auditorium. Raymond cried. He thinks I didn't see, but I did. Our boy has a gift. I pray every day that the world doesn't take it from him, that he remembers where it came from, that he remembers his father's hands built the first instrument he ever touched. Lord, keep him gentle. Keep him grateful. Keep him ours. I closed the diary. Darnell's head was down. His shoulders moved. Your mother wrote about you every day for 26 years, I said. From the day you were born until the day she couldn't hold the pen anymore. She believed in you more than she believed in anything, including herself. Darnell's voice came from somewhere deep. Cracked. Wet. Barely human. I'm sorry, Dad. I looked at my son. Orange jumpsuit. Red eyes. Trembling hands. 34 years old, and looking exactly like the boy who broke the window, stole the quarters, fell off the bicycle. Every version of him was sitting in that chair at once. Sorry doesn't give Min his voice back, I said. Sorry doesn't give me back the years I worked so you could stand on that stage. Sorry doesn't bring your mother back to see what you became. He nodded. He knew. There was nothing else to say about it. I reached into my other pocket and pulled out a $50 bill. I slid it across the table. For your commissary, I said. So you can buy coffee and paper. I want you to write. Not music. Not yet. I want you to write down everything you did and why. I want you to look at it on the page the way I had to look at it on that screen. Saturday night. He took the bill. His fingers closed around it the way a drowning man closes around a rope. And when you're done, I said, I want you to write a letter to Min Tron. You tell that boy what you took from him. You tell him you're sorry. And you mean it. Not for me. Not for the cameras. For him. I stood up. The plastic chair scraped against the concrete floor. Dad, Darnell said. Will you come back? I looked at him. My son. The boy I taught to change a tire. The man who spit on my gift and called me pathetic. The criminal in an orange suit. All of him. Every version. I'll come back, I said. When you've written that letter. I turned and walked to the door. The guard buzzed it open. I stepped through without looking back. Outside, the Detroit air hit me like cold water. Tuesday had been rain. Today was sun. Thin, weak. November sun, but sun. I stood on the sidewalk and breathed it in. Clem's driver opened the car door. I climbed in. On the seat beside me was a brown paper bag. Inside, my music box. Repaired. Every gear cleaned, every tooth refiled. The crank mechanism rebuilt with a precision that could only have come from a master craftsman. I turned the handle. 8 bars. Lorraine's favorite melody. The one that started everything. I held the box against my chest and let the tears come. 40 years of holding things together. 40 years of fixing what was broken. This time, someone had fixed something for me. The car pulled away from the jail. I did not know where I was going, but for the first time since Tuesday, it didn't matter. 8 months later, the building at 1847 Cass Avenue used to be a piano warehouse. 3 stories of red brick and arched windows, built in 1923, abandoned in 1991, condemned in 2008. When I first walked through it in January, pigeons lived on the 2nd floor, and the basement had 6 inches of standing water. The roof leaked in 11 places. The furnace was a corpse of rusted iron. I fixed it, not alone. But I led. Clem's foundation paid for materials. A crew of 14 men from the neighborhood did the framing, the electrical, the plumbing. I did what I knew. I replaced every pipe in the basement with my own hands. I rebuilt the furnace from salvage parts the way I once rebuilt a 1967 Ford Fairlane from a junkyard frame. I sanded the hardwood floors on the 2nd level until they shone like honey in the afternoon light. The sign above the front door read, "The Lorraine Jackson Center for Musical Arts." Gold letters on black wood. Hand-painted by a sign maker on Michigan Avenue who charged me $40 and refused to take a tip. Opening day was a Saturday in June. Warm. The kind of Detroit summer day where the air smells of cut grass and barbecue smoke and the distant sweetness of the river. We opened the doors at 10 a.m., and by noon every chair in the main hall was filled. Children mostly. 43 of them, ages 6 to 16, from neighborhoods where a piano lesson cost more than a week of groceries. Each one received an instrument on loan: violins, cellos, clarinets, trumpets, a set of drums for a 12-year-old boy named Marcus who hadn't stopped grinning since he walked through the door. Min taught the first class. He stood at the front of the room in a white shirt and black trousers. A music stand beside him. A dry Uvaris board behind him. His voice was still quiet, still careful, each word chosen like a note placed on a staff. But he spoke. Full sentences. Instructions. Encouragement. When a 9-year-old girl named Aisha played her first scale on a borrowed violin and hit every note clean, Min smiled. It was the first time I had seen him smile without his eyes carrying the weight of everything behind them. Clem sat in the back row. He wore his trench coat. Old habit. He tapped his fingers on his knee, in that same 7/8 rhythm I first heard on bus number 7. 8 months and a lifetime ago. After the class ended, and the children filed out clutching their instruments like treasures, Clem walked to me. He held a white envelope. "This arrived at my office yesterday," he said. "Forwarded from Wayne County." I took it. My name was written on the front in handwriting I recognized. Darnell's. Neat and careful in a way it hadn't been since he was a teenager, filling out college applications at the kitchen table. I opened it standing in the hallway of the center. My wife's name hung over. 3 pages. Front and back. I did not read it there. I folded it and put it in my jacket pocket, next to the napkin that still read, "Thank you for seeing me." He wrote to Min as well, Clem said. Min received it last week. 6 pages. Did Ming read it? Every word. He hasn't responded yet. He may never respond. But he read it. I nodded. That was enough. For now, that was enough. That evening, I locked the center's front door at 7 p.m., turned off the lights floor by floor, and walked 4 blocks to the bus stop on Trumbull Avenue. The number 7 bus arrived at 718. Same route. Same driver. A heavy-set woman named Gloria, who recognized me and said, "Haven't seen you in a while, sugar." I paid my fare. $2. Dropped the coins into the box, the same way I had dropped them 8 months ago, when the world was a different shape. I took a seat near the back. The bus was half empty. A teenager with headphones. A woman with grocery bags. An old man in a worn coat, sitting 3 rows ahead, staring out the window. The bus pulled away from the curb. I watched Detroit slide past through glass that needed cleaning. Brick buildings. Empty lots. A church with a lit steeple. A barber shop still open. 3 men laughing inside. The city I was born in. The city I would die in. Broken in places. Beautiful in others. Like everything worth loving. I pulled Darnell's letter from my pocket and unfolded it. The first line read, "Dear Dad, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't deserve for you to read this. But I'm writing it because you told me to. And because you were right." I read the whole thing. 3 pages. He wrote about Lorraine. About the music box. About the day he decided to steal Min's work. And how the decision felt small at the time. And grew larger every day until it swallowed him whole. He wrote about Petrov and the debt and the fear that consumed every waking hour. He wrote about the look on my face in the visiting room. He wrote, "I see now that you didn't come to punish me. You came because you're my father, and that's what fathers do. They show up, even when it costs them everything." The last line read, "I don't know who I am anymore, but I know who I want to be. I want to be the man you raised. If it's not too late." I folded the letter. I put it back in my pocket. I looked out the window. The bus stopped at Michigan Avenue. The doors hissed open. A man boarded. 79 years old, silver hair, steel blue eyes, a torn trench coat that smelled of wool and memory. He dropped $2 into the fare box and walked down the aisle. Clem sat beside me. He did not speak. I did not speak. The bus pulled away. We rode together in silence for 3 stops. The city moved around us. The sun was going down, painting the sky above the old Ford plant in shades of copper and rust. "You know," Clem said finally, "I have 11 cars. A helicopter. A private jet that seats 14. "I know," I said. And yet he said, "This bus is the only place I've ever felt like a regular man." I looked at him. He looked at me. And for the first time in 8 months, I laughed. A real laugh. The kind that starts somewhere below your ribs and rises without permission. Clem laughed too. 2 old men on a city bus, laughing at nothing and everything, while Detroit rolled past the windows and the sky turned gold. The bus driver, Gloria, glanced in her mirror and shook her head. "Y'all all right back there?" she called. "Yes, ma'am," I said. "We're all right." And I meant it. God. As my witness. I meant it. The bus turned onto Verner Highway. The same road that led to the shelter where Min found his voice again. The same road that led to the warehouse where Clem showed me who he was. The same road that led everywhere and nowhere, depending on who you were when you boarded. I was Raymond Jackson. 71 years old. Former mechanic. Son of a mechanic. Father of a man who fell and might one day rise. builder of a music box, builder of a center, builder of whatever came next. The bus rolled on. The sun went down. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I heard 8 bars of a melody that belonged to everyone now. Thank God for strangers on buses. Thank God for second chances. Thank God for the ride home. If this story touched you, if you saw yourself in Raymond or Min or even Darnell, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And subscribe. Because next week we have another story that will remind you why the people who love you are the richest gift you'll ever hold.